So this is Syntheyes. It's a camera tracking software and it also does object tracking. We're going to talk about camera tracking. So I'm going to open up the sequence file that I just created in Nuke. So I'm going to go to File, Open. Let's go to Sequence here, and I can just choose my first frame. Click Open, and for now we'll just leave everything at default. Default's at 24 frames per second, and click OK. So this is our shot here, and it's loading into RAM here when we first bring it in. Okay. So we're going to start by clicking on trackers here and click on the magic wand to create our markers. And before we start on that, I'd like to usually set my key to maybe 3 or 4 frames. Okay, I'll set at 3 here. And when we track, I like to look for features that don't change over time or doesn't move over time. Objects that move are like leaves or reflections. We don't want to track those. Or blowing leaves. So in the tree here, plants are a lot of times not the best choice. So let's see here. We can go for maybe this right here. Okay, and I like to pick points that are high in contrast. Okay, and are not symmetrical. Okay, and then I'm going to press on the forward key and making sure this arrow is tracking forward. And as I do that, you'll see that Syntheyes creates a keyframe here every 3 frames forward. Okay, right when I got off here, it fell out of tracking here. And that's probably because I have my search area too small, so when it's looking at the next frame, it's following behind. So I'm going to go back a couple frames here where it's last good, and then I'm going to right click truncate, and if I do that, it's going to erase the keys moving forward. Okay, and I'm going to start back here and then increase this and make it a little bigger, and it will hopefully track better. Okay, so, and I'm going to go all the way until it leaves frame, go back 1 and lock. So I'm going to right click on here and lock. Okay, make sure you always lock your tracking after you're done. Okay, so generally when we track, we want to get a lot of foreground, midground, and background so that the software has a lot of parallax to calculate. Okay, I'm going to, maybe this looks like a good point here. High in contrast, non-symmetrical. Okay, let's make it a little bit bigger, and as I go forward here, you can see that it's tracking well. And again, I'm pressing the forward arrow key. Okay, right before it leaves the frame, locked. Okay. And you can press down on the arrow key too to speed things up. Okay, locked. And you want to make sure from the beginning to the ending of the footage you always have markers covered, preferably at least 5 or 7 at the minimum, so that the software can at least do some kind of calculation. Obviously, the more the merrier. Sometimes you have to do up to a couple hundred. Be aware of shots that look like this, because this outside here is influencing the analyze area, and it's shifting here, so that might not be a good marker to track here. So I'm going to delete this one, no good. Maybe if I go down here and I decrease the size here so it's just looking at this here, and hopefully it's the background's not influencing it. So let's try to track that and see what happens. Okay, so far it's sticking to the corner here. Okay, so that looks like a better option than previously. Okay, oops. So when it goes here, it doesn't find that full pattern, so it's jumping onto the next one. So I'm going to go back one frame and right click truncate. So I leave that out and I'm just going to lock it here. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to continue to keep finding points. This looks like a good one here. Okay, I'm just going to forward here. Oh, this background here got in the way here. See how it shifts a little bit and jumps. So I'm just going to go back here and say I'm okay with that, and right click truncate, and then right click locked. Okay. Okay. Let's maybe get here. Sometimes the shadow might not be a good option, because if the wind's blowing on the tree above, it's going to probably move this point here. Oops, that's not good either. It's okay. It's probably looking at some other shadows or that looks similar. I'm probably not going to use that for now. There's plenty of points in this shot, so I'm not too worried about it. Let's get maybe this point right here. Okay, I'm shrinking it as small as possible so that it doesn't get confused with other features in the background. And I'm going to go forward, 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 forward. Okay, right click locked. Okay. Maybe this wheel back here. Maybe here looks good. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, so far it looks like I have about 3 or 4 trackers at any time during the shot. You can also go into the graphs here. Okay. Graph header. Okay, that button's not working. And you can see that there's if you click on here, you can see that it's the yellow here means that it's got a few markers. Pink means not enough. Okay, and this dark green or gray here probably has about 4 or 5 intersecting markers. Okay, the software can begin to do a math calculation once this whole area is green from beginning to end. Okay, so we're just going to keep going until that becomes green. So I think there's something wrong with the refresh of the graphics card. So I'm just going to click manually here. Okay. Generally, when you click on these, it'll jump to that window. Okay. Let's see here. And every now and then you want to make sure you still have your 3 or 4 selected here, because sometimes when you click a marker that has 0, it will jump back to 0 here, and you'll keep tracking and you don't realize it. Okay, so let's choose here. Okay, I always look back and forth, switch back and forth between this window and this window to make sure it's not jumping here, and make sure it's accurate here. Okay, it's shifting a little bit here. That might not be the best, so I'm going to, I think the darkness here is influencing the pattern. So what you can do is I'm going to delete that, create a new one, make it tighter here. You can okay, it's jumping back and forth. That might not be the best option then. Maybe here. Okay. Okay, it's probably jumping around a little bit because of the compression that's happening in this footage. I think we'll be okay with that for now. It's still within a reasonable area here. Okay, and sometimes when you have so much compression happening in these videos from phones, what you might need to do is track a lot of features around that area so it averages out. Okay, this is beginning to drift too much, so I'm just going to go back to where it's close enough here, and then right click truncate and then lock. Okay, that's okay. Let's see, this one hopefully looks good, so I'm going to go back here. Okay, and go forward, track forward, and pressing the forward key. This motorbike guy's getting in my way. I gotta go back a couple frames, right click truncate, locked. Okay. Okay, this looks like a good point here, and I'm making sure it's not gonna drift too far out. Okay. Okay, right click locked. Okay, and I'm going to begin to try to get a wider area here. Okay, the wider or far apart your markers, the more accurate your solve will become, and the more freedom you have to place objects in your scene. Okay, you don't want to get points way back out here, because any slight jitter out here or movement here equals a bigger distance. Okay, so like if you see it move a little bit here, that could be like meters in that building. So okay, I'm gonna right click lock here. Okay, and after I check, I always like to scrub just to make sure that it's not jumping one frame. That happens sometimes, and usually when you have a couple hundred tracking markers, it's harder to find out which markers are jumping frames or having errors. So it's better to be vigilant earlier during the process of tracking. Okay. Also at this point too, I'm also thinking about if I want to lay my ground plane here, you probably need a wide triangle here, so that later on you can set your origin and your ground plane. So I'm going to try to line up a bunch of tracking markers here and along here. Okay, so this one looks like a good one at the corner here. Okay, it's shifting a little bit here. Okay, I'll probably choose maybe here, so it gives it a less of a chance to drift. See, a corner is a corner. Oops, it's still drifting. Okay, maybe this one. Okay, tracking much better. So those corner high contrast makes a good tracking point. Okay, let's see, anything up here? Okay, that has too many leaves in the background. Maybe this point right here. Okay, I'll probably narrow that down so the leaves in the background doesn't interfere with the analysis area. See? Oops, it's jumping. Why is it jumping? Okay, it's getting confused with that top one. So what I can do is go back one frame before the jump, right click truncate, and oh, it looks like it's jumping over here too. Let's see here why. Okay, it's getting confused with this. So I'm going to go back to where it last had this error, truncate, and maybe lower my analyze area so it doesn't jump up there. See, so it just looks at this narrow area here. Okay. Okay. Okay, so that looks like that. Alright, so here, I guess the background is starting to be white. It's losing its contrast. So right here, I'm just going to truncate. I don't need that. Click on locked. Okay. Okay. looks like it's shifting a little bit. Okay, not too bad. I can live with that. Okay, right before this, guys. Okay, okay, let's just truncate it here. That's good enough. Okay, let's see here. Okay, oh, we have a guy. What is he doing? Okay, hopefully he's standing still and we can use him as a tracking marker. Let's hope he doesn't shiver. Okay. Okay, that's good enough. I seem to encounter a lot of this every time we get footage. Okay, let's get some sidewalk ones here. Okay, locked. Okay, truncate. I can make it smaller. Okay, and a good indication also is if you look at the tail, it doesn't jitter. That's a good indication. Okay, high contrast, asymmetrical points. Okay, and you're noticing I'm jumping between foreground and background objects here. Okay, the more foreground and background difference you have, the more parallax, and the more parallax Syntheyes likes that. Okay, and then if you know where you're going to put your CG, your 3D renders or objects, you can do a lot more clusters or focus, more of tracking that area. We're going to make some kind of CG object on the street here, so I'm going to start to focus on a lot more points, tracking markers on the street here. Okay. Okay. Also, what you can do is if you have like a tree or something pass by a mark, but you really want some kind of feature that's important that you think, you can connect two markers together. For instance, if I want to create something here or have a tracking marker, I can start to track maybe this dark area here, right on top of this dot here. Keep track forward, and if the tree starts to get in the way, okay, let's see here. I can lock it for now, and then wait till the tree passes, create another marker, and try to get to the exact same spot as it was earlier, and continue my track. I think I lost it here. Other stuff are interfering it. I guess for a few frames that's okay here. Okay, I'm going to truncate this, and then I can go back here, and while pressing down shift, I'm going to select this one. So there's two markers selected, and you'll notice that there's no keyframes here, because if we select two markers, the keyframe gets lost. You can either hit shift 7, and it will make the two markers become one, or you can go up into the let's see, where is it at here, under the track here, combine selected trackers, either or. But I think shift 7 is quicker. Okay, let's start to focus more over here. So okay, right click, locked. We can also apply that same trick here. So I'm going to create another marker here, and right before the motorbike guy passes, I'm going to right click, truncate. Okay, locked, and then as I scrub forward, the other one appears, and I'll press Shift Select, so I have both markers selected, and I'm going to press Shift 7, and you notice that down here they're connected. Okay. That trick is really useful, like if you have a big bus covering your whole shot, and not a lot of markers are connected to each other, or you don't have a lot of coverage. That will help out a lot. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back to my graph editor here, and as you can see, a lot more gray and green is happening, and less yellow and pink. So I think I have to focus more at the very beginning and at the end more. Okay. And that doesn't guarantee that it will be an accurate track, but it gives you an idea of how much more you got to go, and if the software will be able to do the math for calculations. Let's see here. Okay. Oops. Okay, I'm going to truncate that. Locked. Okay. Sometimes you can use people standing still, like if her feet is not moving, you can do that. You can track her heel here. Hopefully she's not tapping her feet or anything. Okay, I think that will work. It's risky though. I usually have to use humans only if there's nothing else available. Okay. Someone left their drink here. That might work. Okay, at the beginning it looks like we have a lot of mid-ground points. Try to find a few foreground to help with the parallax here. Okay. Maybe something in the far background here will help. Okay, let's check out my graph here real quick. Okay, so no yellows and pinks here, so let's go back and towards the end of the shot and see if we can get a couple more points and then solve this. So back here, yeah, there's only a couple trackers here, so let's go back here. Here's some background. If you have two monitors, you can tear off that graph editor and watch in real time the colors change. Sometimes that can be fun. And you'll notice the bigger the search area, uh, sometimes the more lag it has as you track forward. So that's why we don't make this super big like this. Okay. That might not be the most ideal point here. And sometimes if you doubt if a marker is good, but you need its position, you can also, after you track it, you can go all the way at the beginning here and weight it like 0.1 or 0.2. But or vice versa, if all the other markers are questionable and you have one marker that's really good or sure, then you can increase that up to 5 or 10. Okay. And Syntheyes will pay attention to the heavier weighted markers. Okay. I'm gonna go for this one, but since possibly if it's a windy day and I'm not sure, I'm going to lock this, go at the beginning here somewhere, and just maybe lower the weight on this. So say maybe 0.2, so it's just a positional data, positional marker, so that if I'm putting a ground plane, I have a rough idea if it's on the ground or not. Okay. And you'll see that as I scrub to the beginning, it's at 1. So that's why I say you bring it all the way to the beginning and you change this, because Syntheyes keyframes that. Okay. So let's go back to our graph editor here. Okay, so at the very least we're almost there, just a couple more. Okay, I don't have a lot on this side, so I'm going to try to get some on here, maybe here. Yeah, oops, similar features. I'm going to just delete that one and make it smaller. Okay, ooh, okay, too much compression happening there maybe. Okay, I think here is better. The darker blue is more contrast. Okay. Oh, we have the tree in the way. Okay, truncate, locked, maybe this one right here. Okay. Okay, that's too similar. Maybe over here. Let's make this longer here, because these aren't that thin. Okay. Oops. That motorbike guy. He's limiting my opportunities. Okay, and let's go back here and see graph editor. Okay, so we all have green and gray. Okay, and I think if you add a lot more, then it becomes gray, but I think that's enough. So I'm going to go back to camera here, press on this to reset full frame, and then let's go to solver, and you can press go, or we can hit shift G. Okay, and it's going to solve here. And when we do that, it usually defaults to the 4 screen, but in my settings, I said don't do that, because when I hit solve I want to be able to select if I need a quad view or not. So this is what we have so far, and if I look at my path, it looks fairly smooth. Okay, and not too much of a shake here, and I have a 0.5 error. That means all these markers are agreeing with each other, but they disagree, not perfectly, but they don't agree perfectly, but they have about a half a percentage, 0.5% disagreement, which is, you know, generally good. It's not the sole indicator. I've done shots where it works at maybe 2 or 3% difference, and I've done shots where it's 0.3 but it still doesn't work. So this is just a rough indication if you're going the right direction or not, and not necessarily set in rule that your track will work. Okay, so at the moment now we see that our ground from our street here, I'm going to select these markers that are on the street here, and you will see that it's tilted up. So how we define our ground plane is we can pick 3 tracking markers that are on the ground, preferably on the same level, and they form a triangle, preferably a right triangle, but sometimes that's not possible, and the wider, farther apart they are, the better. So I will try to find 3 points that are a wide triangle, and the more ground they cover or footage they cover, the better, and the more accurate the points. So this one seems like a good candidate. Okay, let's see here, maybe this one. Okay, and I need one over here, but this one is above the ground, so I need something on the bottom of the ground. So I'm going to track a couple more markers here. Okay, go to my tracker here. Okay, and let's see here, maybe some heavy compression happening here, so it's going to be hard, and I'm going to try to get one that's perpendicular to maybe here or here. Okay, so maybe somewhere over here. Okay, let's try this one right here. Okay. Okay, locked. Okay, so, and then I'm going to click on this, press shift to select these 3, and sometimes I like to color code my markers so that I can readily see which one I'm using. So I'm going to change these to orange just visually so I know that those are my street markers. Also, I would like to roughly set how big this road is, because right now Syntheyes have no idea what the size of this street or this road is. It could be like a small miniature, or it can be a huge city block or planets. It doesn't know how big your road is. So I'm gonna probably choose 2 markers that are not my street, and I can define what's the distance of that. I can also bring in geometry, like say from 3D Studio Max, and place it in here and scale or shrink my world. But I'll save that for another tutorial. Let's see here. You can see that there's some sliding going on here. Let's see. So I think after here, and also here too. So as we get further here, the markers, the trackers in the beginning are not being calibrated, or not having any association with positional data, so it's drifting. So we might need to reinforce more markers that span more or connect more the beginning of the markers with the end of the markers. For instance, here is the last known where it's good, but as it goes here it's drifting off. So if I add a lot more points around this area from here on, then this has a better chance of sticking on that tree. So I'm going to give it a couple more tracks here. Okay, let's see here. It's this Honda guy that made me avoid this area a lot, but I'm going to let's see. I'm just going to try to find more. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna go for this shadow down here. Oops, no, not good. Okay, just above that guy's head. Okay. Okay. It's a little shaky there, but preventing that drift is pretty important. Otherwise, you'll have geometry floating or being slowly shifted as the shot progresses. Okay. Tire bicycle getting in the way. Okay, and at this point I'm going to speed track, meaning I'm going to get some points here, there. Okay, and I may not cover a lot of frames, but I'm going to reinforce it by a lot of shorter ones. That's what happens when you have a lot of objects moving in front of your camera, where your options are getting slimmer. Okay, so I think I have some kind of connection here. So hopefully if we hit solve or shift G, we will move this marker closer to the tree. So let's see here. Okay, it didn't move. Okay. That's cool. And for this side here, or it could be that this one is just has too much noise. Okay, but let's see here. Yeah. Truncate, locked. Okay. Okay, not enough of a bump here. Okay, so you see that it moved a little bit closer. Okay. I think also, let's see here. I think also it could be not a so maybe moving into it, there's not a lot of other trackers helping it out with the position. So let's see here. Shift G. Okay, so this one seems to stick. I just think that this one didn't start off too well here. Okay, for now I'm probably just gonna turn that as a low weight here. That seems to be the only one drift. Oh, okay, there's one here. So it seems like the ones in the beginning are drifting as we go along. So also I think it's because as we make a turn here, there's not a lot of parallax here happening. So the software is having a hard time pinpointing where these are. So I'm gonna probably focus on a few points in here as we turn the shots. This might not work well. Let's see here because of the reflection. Okay. Okay, actually it's working fairly okay. So I'm going to have to get a lot of points as we make this curve here. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so let's solve this, see if that helped this. Okay, so just slightly better, but not right here. Okay. These ones on a never seems to work out. Okay. I have enough on the car here. Let's see, anyone on the building that I can use? Okay. Okay, so maybe if I can connect this one. Let's track this here. Seems to be the same as the other one, but I'm just going to keep it as two separate ones because I want more parallax references. So I'm going to have two there just to make sure. Okay, so let's solve this now. Okay. Okay, sometimes if it pops up over here, you can even manually move it back down here too also. Okay, let me solve this orb. I forgot to lock it here, or set the keyframe actually. Okay. Okay. Alright, at this point I think there's something wrong here. Let me see. Why isn't... So there's these three guys that are the problem here. And let's see why they aren't tracking correctly. All the other points seem to be okay. Okay, so let's look at them one by one here. Okay, I'm going to try to connect. The reason why we discontinued this earlier because it was hitting this, but I think I'm going to try to connect it here and then track forward here, and I'm just going to connect this marker with it. Oops. Go back a couple frames, truncate, and I'm going to hit select here, shift there, and then let's solve it. Okay, so that will bring that in there. Okay. And we're probably going to do the same with these tracking markers. Okay, I did my best here. Sometimes it's just not enough connection with the initial part of the shot to the end, so we just have to force it that way. Okay, so this marker is at the beginning of this cement block here, and as it moves away here, I'm going to retrack it here and track forward, and I'm going to connect it with this. Okay, with this one right here. Okay, and then hit shift, select, shift 7. Okay, and then the same thing with this one. It's tracking here. Okay, so that one looks good. So I'm going to hit shift G here, and I think that puts everyone in a correct spot. Okay, so this one is fixed, and the other two are relatively okay. Okay, so now I'm going to set my ground plane. So let's look at the quad here. Okay, I'm going to go to my coordinates here, and I'm going to press on this button here, this little star 3, and I'm going to click on my origin, which is one of these three here. This can be my origin here. Okay, and then when you click on it, it will change to LR, which is left right, and I'm going to click on this, which is left right, and then my PL for placement, I'm going to click on this one right here, and apply coordinate systems, say yes, and if I press yes, it's going to resolve or reposition, and if I go to quad here, you see that all my points are on the ground now. Okay, so it's leveled with the ground. And if I go to my 3D panel and I create a plane here, and I'm just going to create a plane here, it should be able to see our street. Okay, here. Okay. Okay. And if I press the backslash button, it's going to give it a wireframe, and I can check out the underlying footage. Okay, and I can try to align it till it's uh, parallel with the street. So that line is looking like it's parallel with the street, and this one also. At this point, I'm going to go on my scale, and I estimate, or it was estimated, that the street was about 7 meters wide. So I'm going to go here and change this to 700 centimeters. Okay, and when I do that, I want to make this 1,000 centimeters. Okay, so that's each of this unit is a centimeter, and if we see that that's our Syntheyes world is really small, because this is 7 meters, but here it seems like it's less than a meter. So how we define that is we can go into our coordinates tab, and then we can select this marker, okay, and then there's a marker over here. We can say, okay, this is marker tracker 70 and this is tracker 46. So with this one selected, I'm going to go to target points and I'm going to look for 46. Okay, so tracker 46. Okay, and click OK. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that there's a gray line pointing over to that, and we can define that here. So click back on here and we'll define it as 700 centimeters. Okay, as soon as we click that in, we can hit Shift G again and it will solve, and now you see that our street plane shrinks down. Okay, so it's a rough estimate that this is 7 meters. Okay, so that's setting our world into a better scale. And then I'm going to go back into our plane here and move it just so it's aligned here. Okay, so that's that seems like it will be good enough for use. And so the next step I'm going to do now is go to File and then Export, and we're going to export to 3D Studio Max. Okay, where is it at here? Or Max Script version 6 for later. Okay, and I'm going to save. Where's my folder at? It's under tutorials. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to call this my street scene. Okay, and once it's saved out, click OK here, and we'll see you in 3D Studio Max. Oh, wait, one more thing. Make sure that under your Syntheyes edit preferences somewhere here, that it exports out into centimeters. Okay, so File Export here. Export units, make sure it's centimeters. Okay, here, that's very important, because if it goes into max and if you don't set that, it's not going to be correct. Click OK, and then we're going to re-export or export again. We can say export again and it will export again. Okay, see you soon in Max.